So to start this conversation, I would just like to say thank you to the algorithm. Thank you to the algorithm. And people don't thank the algorithm enough.
It's true.
The algorithm gets a lot of shit, but like I would like to say today, thank you to the algorithm, because without the algorithm, I would not know there was a Professor Skye. I don't know where you and I would have crossed paths, Professor Skye. I don't know where you and I would have bumped. I got accepted to SUNY Binghamton, but that's nowhere near Brockport where you are, right?
Yeah, it's a couple hours away. It's a good school. My daughter's on the college market. She's going to be applying there. It's a very good school.
Yeah, Binghamton was kind of like ooh, you got into Binghamton.
Yeah.
But you were a professor at SUNY Brockport University, that's State University of New York, Brockport, and you're a French professor, correct?
Yes. I mean, that's sort of in theory. They've canceled the French program, so I kind of float around teaching other stuff. I actually teach a lot of classes on hip-hop now because those fill. So yeah, I'm sort of like, I'm getting into administration and a whole bunch of other stuff I never wanted to do. And then I have my intellectual outlet is really YouTube videos about music.
So look at that. People are ditching French for hip-hop, and you're riding the wave.
That's right. Well, I mean, to be honest, if I had known that I could have been a hip hop scholar, like for real, when I was getting into it, 25 years ago, I probably would have tried to do that. But at the time, there was like very little serious scholarship on rap music or on hip hop. It was basically like Nelson George's book and then like nothing else, as far as I understood. So if I was a little bit more brave, maybe I would have been one of the founders as opposed to a wave rider.
Well, it's never too late, and I don't use wave riding as a as a pejorative. If that's the right word, if that makes sense. No, I completely agree. If the wave's there, ride that joint. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Always Positive music review channel hosted by French professor of SUNY Brockport University, Professor Skye's Record Review, and that's how I found you, Professor, because the algorithm, who I thanked earlier, the algorithm fed you to me at the height of the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef and diss track back and forth, if you will.
Yes.
And then your video breaking down the tracks that were going back and forth, to be quite honest, were things I'd never seen the conversation quite the way you broke it down. And it was really amazing to me because you're a pure academic, number one, but you're also a hip hop man.
Yeah.
You are a hip hop dude. And I also don't want to say that as if like the black guy's like, wow, the white guy's a hip hop guy. But like, it's just weird how the world is. Like, you just look at people and you don't we all assume, and we don't know what we're going to get when we see people. We try to make assumptions. But I was quite honestly very impressed with your intensity and your detail.
Yeah, well, I mean, that whole thing was so like surreal because the video that took off, I went a video that went viral, and like, so I've been doing this for 6 years, right? So I've been doing YouTube videos for a long time, and I have success, but not like huge success. Like it's a hobby I picked up in the lobby. That's what I always say, and quoting Wu-Tang. But like when that took off. And then I had all these people, and like, so I have cursed the algorithm so many times because when you try to do something different and new, the algorithm I call it the kitty, the algorithm cat. So like, if you piss it off, it jumps on top of the refrigerator and doesn't like come near you for a week. So like, I've been through all of these like experiments and they failed, and then I get like a tenth of my views. So when I was doing the Kendrick Drake stuff, I have like a normal intro that I do to every video, but I was kind of embarrassed because I was like, I'm just not going to talk about beef. I'm like a serious, I'm a real 100% professor and a hip hop guy, like you said. So I was like, I shouldn't be talking on this, but then it was just, there was too much there. And so I just sort of did this video in my office and just kind of figured, I'll just throw it out there, whatever. I didn't even watch my words that carefully. And then I was in a meeting of the Academic Senate, which is a pretty interesting and sometimes boring event. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my phone, and the numbers keep going up and up and up. And then the best thing that's happened, I mean, yeah, it's awesome getting 100,000 subscribers, all that, but really just people finding me, in that sense that like the way that you've so kindly described what I do, like that's what I've been doing. And I'm so happy that people found it and that they found it on a representative thing, even if I try to be always positive, and I became most famous for dunking on Drake for 20 minutes. But it's not that hard to get
I think you gave a very critical review of what you think Drake is. And mind you, I'm here in Toronto, just so you, which you know. But, you know, this is like the home of Drake. But I was very open to your criticism of Drake because I think it came from a very informed place.
Yeah, well, I really push back on the claims of bias because, like, if you just say bias, it's like you can just hand wave away everything. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of great things about Drake, and I've reviewed every album he's released in the last 6 years, and I like most of them. I mean, I actually think Honestly Nevermind is a great, not good album. I really do. I think it's fascinating what he did there. And, like, when he's good, and when he's bad, it's interesting. And so he was really bad, and it was really interesting how he was bad. So I'm glad that as a current inhabitant of Toronto that you were able to. I mean, I said this to you before. I almost didn't even respond because I was afraid, because I knew that you were a drive time DJ in Toronto. I was afraid that I was going to get like ambushed with like hate on me. Mr. Drake.
Jabbar from Chubby was like, "Oh, damn it! I really did it now." Well, you know, if you listen to Chum, you know that's not necessarily our style. We don't really come at people like that. But you know, I thank you for responding to the DM, man. And you know, let me ask you a question, and I'm also going to put a caveat on the question. I'm going to ask you a question, and then first, let me know if this is a fair question to ask you or not, or an offensive question.
Okay.
I would like to know your background in hip hop. Like, how did you get into hip hop? And is that a fair question to ask you?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I could see why someone would be defensive about that. But because, like, I think and talk so much about white people in the hip hop space. Like, I talk about it constantly. And some people say I talk about it too much, but I think it's a really important thing because it's way too simplified too often. And I think if a lot of white participants in hip hop, like someone actually asked me, she's like, how can I do it? And I say, well, just don't apologize, but acknowledge. So that's it. So, like, I came from a rich suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not going to, I do apologize for redlining and all the terrible things done in my name by the country. But, like, my friend Jonathan, he had a Fat Boys tape. I listened to the Fat Boys tape, and I loved the Fat Boys, and I tried to be Buffy the Beatbox, And
honestly, you could even just stop right there. Like, you got your card. Not many people can even say Fat Boys anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Rest in peace to a good friend of mine, Prince Marky D, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Me and Marky used to work together in Miami. Great man. Really love that man a lot. Prince Marky D, he was, after the hip-hop thing, he was doing radio. We were together in the same cluster. So I was very, very close with him.
Yeah, whenever people talk about, like, celebrity deaths that hit you the hardest, like, Buffy's death was, like, I remember, like more than Kurt Cobain. And I'm a white kid from the suburbs, and I love Nirvana. I saw them in concert, all that thing. But something about, like, him passing hit me so viscerally. So, yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I rented Disorderlies. I still stand. That's a good hip-hop movie.
I haven't watched it in a while. Does that movie still stand up?
I don't know. I haven't watched it in 20 years, but I remember it being really good. Maybe we should do a watch along sometime.
And do a Disorderlies breakdown and see if Disorderlies still, if it still looks good. But that's great. Okay. Yeah. But so Boston, you had a friend. You guys would listen to Fat Boys tapes.
Yeah, and then my brother, who was 6 years older than me, he was really into it as well, and so. Being 12 years old in 1989 when NWA was arriving on the national scene, and Eazy-E, that was just like, and Public Enemy, having all those at the same time. So, like, when you're a 12-year-old kid, especially when you're like a 12-year-old white privileged kid with hippie parents, you get, like, really into questions of, like, social justice, right? It's just a natural part of your thing. So, like, having Public Enemy on one side, like, legitimately giving me straight up lessons in African and African American history. Like, the kinds of things they put on their records, Black Mama, White Daddy, Black Baby, that whole, like, skit, like, just hearing that and not understanding, and so many things that they put in there. So, like, I got this education from things that were not being taught to me, right? Because, I have a couple of teenagers and a baby. But like, I'm really happy at the way that the curriculum has changed. You know, like my kids actually study Malcolm X in high school. Right? When I was growing up, you just didn't. You know, it just didn't exist. So like, I got that through Public Enemy, and then at the same time, I got all of the fun, you know, cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers that was like NWA at that time for just sort of like fantasy play and all that. And then I just kind of kept going, and my brother, he would just, you know, he got really into Biz Markie, and then that's probably the rapper I listened to the most, you know, in my early life. I mean, I just absolutely loved. I mean, I thanked Biz Markie's DJ in my high school quote. I thanked Cutmaster Cool V because I was like, that's what the Biz would want me to do. And yeah, but like the funny thing was, like, I didn't consider myself like a hip hop guy, you know, because like there were spaces like that even back then in Boston. There was a record store called Biscuit Head Records on Mass Ave. There's another place called Skippy White's, and like I would go in there, and there'd be a lot of guys who looked like me, you know, with the backpack, the whole thing. But I would just be sort of like, I don't know, man, it's a little too intense. I don't know. So I do consider myself like a hip hop guy, but not like a hip hop guy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because there's layers to being a hip hop guy, and I would argue, color and neighborhood aside, you're more hip hop than most people who are hip hop guys, because you've got like a sick pedigree in terms of like the things that you've experienced and consumed and that you can recall from. Most people who are, you know, just essentially living the culture, a lot of people don't even go that deep or that far back. So even though you say you're not a hip hop guy, I would argue you're more hip hop than some hip hop guys in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I mean, lived experience is a thing. Like, I mean, it is a thing. Like,
yes.
Like you. So I think there's just degrees to it, and I don't want anybody listening to the podcast come from me and be like, "Dog, you giving them all the keys or whatever." It's not really that. What I'm saying is that
no,
there's levels to people's experiences, and you have a wealth of experience that some people who, you know, are African American or of Black origin and live the culture, you have some experience. You could teach a lot of people some stuff too. You know, I think it just goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because one of the other things I do on the channel that gets a lot of success is I talk about Serbian music and Yugoslavian music, because my wife is from Yugoslavia. And it's kind of a similar thing where it's like, I'm not Serbian. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that life. Not at all. Yeah. But because I bring what I've been trained in, which is, you know, literary analysis and sort of making interesting connections, like there's this sense of like, oh, thank God you're here. And that's sort of what I always want to be. I want to be the guy who's not like a part of the thing, but the guy who's like, hey, you know, I'm not from this country, so I don't know anything about this, but this is interesting. And then they go, oh, you know, I hadn't actually thought of that. I hadn't put those things together.
That's a very respectful position. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that, and that's part of being an academic, is that my main area of focus is 17th century French theater. And like, I don't know, I never wore a wig, you know, I've never like, I've never been to Versailles, you know, I've been to Versailles, but, you know, I've never been in the court of Louis XIV. So like, why not just assume that you treat something that seriously while never thinking that that means you are actually in Louis XIV's court? You're just writing about the people who are there.
When I was a kid, I'll tell you a thought I had all the time that, and I want to, from an academic perspective, I want you to kind of contextualize this for me. I used to hate the word classical music. You know, once I got into like middle school and high school, I started, you know, getting into instrumental music. I played like the clarinet, I played the sax, I started playing the guitar, I played in the wind ensemble, like the jazz band. And anytime people would say the word classical music, it would give me an ick. Like it would literally, it was like, you know, when you knock the knee and you get a reflex, like it was a reflex for me. I hated the term classical music because my understanding of the term classical is that it's like a subjective term. Like, whose classics are these? These aren't my classics. So how could someone name a whole genre classical? And I would argue that for me, hip hop is classical music. Am I thinking about this the wrong way from an academic perspective, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, that particular example is really interesting because people, like, the term classical music is more often than not employed with great ignorance, because classical actually only refers to a very specific period, sort of like the late 17th through the middle of the, late 18th to early of the 19th century. Like, so, like Bach isn't really classical music. He's Baroque music. And a lot of people who aren't actually classical music, Beethoven is sort of classical, but he's more romantic. So like people just use this term to mean everything. And it's for that exact reason that you're saying. They think that the word classical, which should be a descriptor, it's like a specific description of an aesthetic ideal, like of a certain amount of grace and line and melody, a certain amount of harmony and structure. Like, that's a specific thing, but you're totally right. People just use that word to basically mean like fancy good. Like, that's really what they mean when they say
like
classical.
Expensive stuff, Mercedes is parked outside, and a guy conducting. Classical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Adam Neely is another very good YouTuber with just 10 times my viewers, so people know about him. But he breaks that down a lot. That just how often the term classical just means like just take off the école. It's just about class. It's basically saying, good job, you're playing rich person music.
That's it. That's what I hated about it. That's why I don't like golf, and that's why I don't like classical music. It's the class.
There's lots of reasons
it.
not to like golf.
Okay, thank you for seeing me and not make me feel crazy.
No, it's totally right. Like that reflex that you had was totally right. What they were saying to you was, hey, you're playing rich people music, and you were just trying to play the clarinet. Like, right? Like, how can you just play the clarinet because it's a nice instrument?
Right. It's also kind of nerdy, so I got into sax, but
yeah.
I respect all woodwinds.
Yeah.
I want to read a controversial statement of yours that I love. And if you can, I'm sure you've done this a million times, but I would love you to break it down for my friends listening to the podcast.
Yes.
Your quote is, hip-hop is the most important artistic movement in human history. I want that to marinate for a second, everybody. Did you hear what Professor Skye of SUNY Brockport said? And I'll repeat it. Hip-hop is the most important artistic movement in human history. Now, is that hyperbole, or do you actually mean that?
Can it be both?
Okay.
Yes, I absolutely mean it, but I also know it's hyperbolic. So I'm totally ready to defend it. So this is how I mean it, is that hip-hop is two things, right? It's the Black American expression, right? The current most popular form of Black American expression, right? Most of the great musical movements of the last 100 years, anything that has a drum beat in it, you basically have to thank the Black American experience and culture for bringing it to us, right? Rock and roll, soul, pop, techno, all of it, right? And that's super important, and that on its own makes it very important. But the other part is its ability to be used as a tool. And that's what I try to do when I talk about French rap or British rap or Australian rap or Ghanaian rap, right? That Black Americans created a culture that is also a tool, and that is the tool of the voice of the voiceless. And that's what goes beyond the constraints of race, of gender, of anything, because it's so simple. The metaphor I like to use, I'll use a hockey metaphor because I know you're up in Canada. Hockey is like not good for Canada, right? Like everyone loves it, but it's too expensive. It's killing the middle class. There's a great book about it. Right. I love hockey, okay? I'm a big Bruins fan. But like, it's not good for the people because it costs so much money. You can't be some kid in Ghana and just decide that you're going to be a hockey player. Right. You might be a soccer player because all you need is a ball. You need a ball and someone else. And like, that's what hip-hop is. The simplicity of the delivery, the barrier to entry is literally a voice. Like, that's it. You don't even have to have a good voice. You don't have to be able to sing. You have to be able to have ideas and put those things together. So on the sort of like large-scale philosophy of why is it the most important artistic movement in human history, that's the reason why. It's that it's so unbelievably powerful and simple at the exact same time.
Super accessible.
Yes, and it does something really important. And throughout like the entire world, like the kind of gatekeeping that happens, or culture protecting that happens with like Black Americans, also happens in other places. It's not like there's not privileged rappers in other countries, but still, in France, the most important stuff that comes out is the stuff that comes out of the disadvantaged suburbs where all the immigrants have been shoved into from the former French colonies for the past 50 years. Like, it always has this energy and this power of this tool that was created. And then it like the evidence just keeps on coming. And I get that rock and roll is super important, but hip hop's been around, okay, if you don't want to say 50 years because you don't count DJ Kool Herc's party, you can still say, 40. It's going so strong. It has no sign of letting up. It keeps getting bigger. It keeps expanding. It's now fashion. I mean, hip hop and fashion have always been together, but now hip hop kind of rules fashion. Like, that was just in the last 10 years. You look at the most important visual artists of the past 30 years, 40 years, they all owe to graffiti and street art, which all goes back. Like, every single where you look, it's like that Jizzle line. If you living in the world today, you're living in the world that hip hop made, right? Like, it's just everywhere you look. The way we talk, the way we dress, the way we, like, what we listen to. So that's why I make such a bold claim. And then because I've studied art history, because I've studied history, because I've studied literature, I've studied a lot of artistic movements. And yeah, the Renaissance was a super important movement, and there's a pretty fair case to be made that that's more important than hip-hop. I'm not trying to say that you couldn't, or, I don't know, postmodernism isn't quite a unified movement, but definitely it's had but in my opinion, those things have not done so much for so many people, and that's part of why. So yeah, I could just I actually came up on this idea back in the old days when Kanye would talk about being the new Picasso, and like, I've really studied Picasso, and in my opinion, Picasso is perhaps the greatest visual artist of all time. And I think Kanye is more important than Picasso. Like truly. Like wow. I will.
So I want to put a pin in that for a second.
Yeah,
Not even put a pin in. Let's just go there for a second. When Kanye says things like that, people think he's out of his mind. They're like, this dude is crazy. Like, when he starts making comparisons to himself to like Walt Disney, Picasso, Steve Jobs, there's a large swath of people that write him off. Either because they, don't like his political and social views, and they're just already turned off from, some of his missteps, or because they're like, how could you make such a claim?
Yeah.
So you're defending that right now.
I'm defending the Picasso thing. Now, when he compares himself to Steve Jobs, I don't think that Kanye actually I don't think he's Walt Disney or Steve Jobs. Like, those are different kinds of geniuses.
Okay.
But when it comes to the kind of genius that Picasso was, Picasso created art, and then the second that the art took root and changed the entire world, he completely changed what he was doing and did something else. And everybody said, that's a crazy thing. Why are you doing that? And then they all started doing it. And then the second that they liked him doing it, he went and did something else. And he did that for 70 years. I mean, he was so influential and so powerful for so long. So, I mean, first of all, he is unwell, right? So he is actually mentally unwell. So I don't blame anybody, the political stuff, I don't support it. I do think he is unwell, and I do feel ambiguous every time I talk about him because I don't want to contribute to his disease, But when it comes to that, when he compares himself to Picasso or Mozart or anything like that, like, based on what I understand of his music and the influence that I see, and Picasso and his art and what I see, analogies are tricky because in order to make a good analogy, you have to understand both sides of the analogy. And so you often will get lost because like one side works and the other side doesn't. So that's why he works so well in my mind as Picasso, because I feel like I understand Picasso as well as I understand Kanye, and I'm like, oh, this just totally works.
And that totally is very unique, Professor Skye. The problem is you have people like myself who understand Kanye very, very, very detailed, in a very detailed way. But, my knowledge of Picasso is just, I've seen Picasso's. I know what a Picasso looks like, but I don't really have a very strong background on visual art or Picasso. So I can't really support or defend or deny it or refute it. But you actually know Picasso and Kanye, and you're saying that works.
Yeah. That's where I come at it from, and that's where, like, that's why, like, I wouldn't say he's not Steve Jobs. I don't think he's Steve Jobs, but I don't really actually understand what Steve Jobs did. Like, I sort of get it. I have friends who worked for Apple and stuff, like, back in the day. Like, I sort of get it. Like, but like, I would never feel comfortable saying that, you know, or Musk or Bezos or whatever other people he simps for. But in general, like, that's part of what I try to bring to the channel and to my sort of what do I call it? Public facing scholarship. That's what I call my YouTube channel. That, like, it's serious. Like, hip hop and rap is really serious. It really deserves to be treated really seriously. It never deserves to be dismissed. It never deserves, like, and I'm not saying it's only racism. Sometimes it's classism, why it gets dismissed. It can be either of those things. But I know in my heart, like, as much as you can possibly know, that in 300 years they're going to be studying Reasonable Doubt and Illmatic, and they're going to be like, so these came out around the same time, huh? And they're going to really be trying to figure out what it is, because, you know, Raphael was painting, you know, and then Michelangelo was painting in the same place, in the same building, you know,
Right.
like, it's like, I try to just put that space. I try to put myself forward as an academic in 100 years. Like, what am I going to be looking back? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'd want to look back at the Beatles, but I don't know if I would, like, I don't know, would I care about Coldplay? I mean,
You know what?
maybe.
I recently just understood the Beatles. Like, I was like maybe a month ago, years old, when I finally got what the whole Beatles thing was. I watched that movie with the kid who, I guess he bonked in the head and he woke up.
Oh, yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah. I watched that movie and I was like, oh, like I just didn't grow up in the era. My mom liked the Beatles. My mom grew up in Jamaica and, you know, the British influence and the British invasion and all that stuff. And the Beatles just always sounded like a bunch of guys singing off beat to me. Like, what is happening? And I'm a musician, so, like, I feel like I should have really understood the Beatles. But I only say that, Professor Skye, to say that sometimes if you weren't there, you weren't there, and you don't get it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great example. And that's part of why I'm always positive, is that, like I just, like, my whole life has just been art, right? I mean, I do other stuff, but, like, just experiencing art, like getting to read novels as, like, a job, which was my job for a while when I still could be a French professor, and, you know, listening to music. And it's such a, like, amazing blessing to be able to, I mean, as the Beatles is a great example. I mean, like, the Beatles, Dylan, Shakespeare, Michelangelo, Picasso, all those things, like, they're just sitting out there. And if anyone goes into it with good faith and, like, just sits down and listens and reads, it's like they get to have the greatest meal that's ever been served to them, and it's just sitting right there on Spotify. Like they can just go there and have it. But I know that because that's all kind of my culture-y sort of stuff, and that's the stuff that I've been exposed to. And that's why, you know, when I listen to Glorilla, it's like, it's there too. Like, Glorilla, that album is really good. She's doing really interesting things. And if you open yourself up to what she's saying and how she's saying it, then it's like another great meal. I'm not saying it's as good as Shakespeare, but I'm saying it should be treated with the same kind of, like, passion and joy, you know?
Is Glorilla a timeless classic at this point? I mean, in your opinion? I mean, is it? I mean, it's. I mean, it hasn't been enough time yet, but is it going to be there? Is it going to be stand up?
That's interesting. So
because I have my list of timeless classics. Some of them are, like, right behind me.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to know about your list of timeless classics. But first, Glorilla. Will Glorilla become, like, wow? I remember when the Glorilla album dropped, and wow, what a time.
Probably not. But what I would imagine is that she would be a sort of secondary figure, you know, like a secondary figure of this moment in particular of women in rap music, sort of when it made the shift from you have to sing to you have to spit, you know, like you have to really have good bars. Like, that thing happened. And, like, I've heard some people talk about it online, this kind of shift, but it's like, wait, like, the people who seem to be working hardest on their bars in the mainstream are all the female rappers, and all the male rappers are trying to sing and just be catchy. Like there's been this sort of thing there. So I could imagine, yeah. Because I'm just trying to get through the Megan Thee Stallion album, you know. Like I think she's a timeless classic. I think that when we look back on this time, we'll see, wow, you know, that she really was something interesting, really was something good, even though she got grouped in with a bunch of other people and part of a moment.
Let's go album for album for timeless classics in our opinions, okay? And these are just opinion based. I'll throw one out. Aquemini. Outcast.
Okay, so am I supposed to say if it is or isn't, or am I just supposed to talk about the album?
I believe it's a timeless classic,
Yes.
and you just tell me if you agree or not.
I agree, but I was an East Coast snob at the exact wrong time. So I was exposed to Outkast by... So you remember Maurice the Pants Man?
Yeah.
Okay, so Maurice the Pants Man's grandson was my college roommate.
That's very random, yo. That's random as hell.
Just, you know, for those of you who know Maurice the Pants Man. And he was really in... So I was trying to get him into rap that I liked, and he was trying to get me into rap that he liked, so we kind of like fought against each other.
Yeah.
So I would play him something, he'd play me something. So he played me Outkast, and I just clowned on them because of the accent. Like, I clowned on them for all the things that made them so great. So I am a late bloomer. I now love Outkast. I was totally wrong. I was a complete idiot. So yes, definitely it's great.
You know what's so funny about your perspective on that is because I'm an East Coast hip-hop snob. I grew up in Queens, and I remember, like, here's my snobbery. I'm late to the party on Tupac.
Right.
Because, like, when I was growing up, the sound of West Coast rap was just antithetical to my surrounding. You couldn't hear those. You know that sound in West Coast? It goes, twing, like little thing they do in there. And it just didn't look like Queens and Brooklyn. Like, there's nowhere you could play that music and it would match the background. So it just didn't play.
Yeah.
So I didn't even have an appreciation for, like, Pac and a lot of those guys until much later. But I reference Outkast because I left New York and went to college. I went to the University of Maryland, which, for all intents and purposes, from a New York perspective, is down south, which it really is not.
It's on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line. It counts.
Right. It's a couple steps over the Dixie line, but I got down there, and that's why I got introduced to Outkast, and it blew my mind because, in my opinion, they were so jazzy and melodic and syncopation and just everything that I loved about music. They put in that album, so I was open to it, but you weren't there yet. Interesting.
Yeah. It came later, like actually more through studying rap music. Then that's how I sort of gave it more of a chance because everyone took it so seriously. But like whatever, you know, the South got something to say, you know, like when you said that at the Source Awards, like I would have been one of the guys. I mean, I wouldn't have been brave enough to go to that weird event, but like, I would have been one of those guys like, boo, you suck.
That's who I was though. I was like, you know, but I was so much more accepting. I don't know. I was definitely a snob. I was an East Coast hip hop snob, but I had a vibe of acceptance because I accepted Goody Mob early. You know, I listened to like Soul Food, that tape with Elevate. What was that song? I'm forgetting the name of the song. The B side was Soul Food, but the A side was something else. Anyway, I was accepting of that stuff. Okay, so give me one of your timeless classics now.
Okay, timeless classics. So like if you were to like ask me like what is my favorite rap albums of all time, I have to go. It's kind of a deep cut, but because you just said Queens, All We Got Is Us by Onyx. I think,
bro,
I made a video. I made a video a long time ago before I had any success about why that is the greatest rap album of the 90s. Like every single track on that album is killer. Every rhyme is killer. It's themed around this desperately dark, suicidal vision of the American ghetto. All three of them are on fire. It's all self-produced. It's just like, the skits are terrifying, but they're good. And, I mean, it has so many quotables. I mean, to this point, just like my friends and I, because we all got into it at the same time, we all just, every once in a while, just text each other, you know, some random thing. When I went to Queens for the first time, I would just like walk around and be like, "Some Suicide Queens." And it didn't matter if I was in like Jamaica or somewhere else. I just, so yeah, that's like, I try to tell anyone who will listen, like, please listen to All We Got Is Us. Because I know that Back the Fuck Up was their big album.
Yes.
But that is just so great.
So Back the Fuck Up is my favorite Onyx, obviously. I'll tell you a quick story about Onyx. Okay. When I was growing up, my friends from back home don't even know this story, but I will say it out loud today for the first time. So we used to run around. I'm from Far Rockaway, and a lot of my friends were like from Laurelton and Southside Jamaica and like St. Albans, around the part where Onyx kind of ran. And when that album dropped, we were young. We were kids, you know what I'm saying? But we used to see hip-hop dudes all the time because it was just low. You know, I saw LL all the time. We saw Lost Boys pretty recent, you know, like often at like the mall, like Green Acres Mall, we just see Lost Boys, like all that, you know, it was like the guys. But when Onyx dropped, I actually was afraid to run into them.
Wow.
I was like, I don't ever want to see these dudes hip hop. I said, we run into everybody, but I kind of don't want to run into Sticky Fingers. Like,
yeah,
like I'm good if I never see Onyx in the street. It was just like, you know, young fear and shit. But they were that dark and what's the word? Disturbing.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that album just really, I mean, that's still probably the rap album I've listened to the most.
Damn.
Like any rap album.
I would not have guessed that I would have heard Onyx on this call today. All right, cool. So I'm gonna throw out another one then.
Okay.
Beats, Rhymes, and Life. Tribe.
So the thing, okay, it's not that I don't know why.
Yes.
But Tribe never connected with me the way that De La did.
Okay.
And
respect.
I don't know if, and again, like I don't actually spend like a lot of time on Twitter or stuff like that. I don't actually know all the discourse, but I wonder if like, are there people out there who love Tribe and De La equally, or is it sort of like the Beatles and Stones, where it's like, you sort of end up picking one or something? So I don't know why, but when they came out, I liked it. You know, my brother, you know, he used to listen. I Left My Wallet and El Segundo like all the time, you know, and obviously I like their stuff, but it never quite connected to me. So like, I think I have most of their CDs, and I think I listen to them. And I like them a lot, and I really respect it. And I mean, that song "Vibrant Thing" by Q-Tip, and that was a single. I know it wasn't them, but that in my opinion is one of the great like pop rap singles of the '90s. But yeah, so like I really like it, but much like Outkast, it's just like it just didn't quite connect to me. I don't know if in my head I just thought, well, I like De La, not Tribe, which is like the silliest thing, because I think every member of both those groups would be like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
So.
Let me see if I can attempt to break down what was happening for you there. I think Tribe is heavy on the sound and the feeling, and with some dope messages in there. I think De La is heavy on messaging with some cool sounds.
Yeah. And it might also just be that they were more playful too, you know, like with the Prince Paul production, and like, you know, because like when I was I can try to go back, because, you know, I was a teenager in the 90s. I can try and go back and do some kind of sociological study of my interpretation of race and hip hop. I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
I knew that I loved the Beastie Boys, but if someone said, do you love rap music, I would never say that I love the Beastie Boys. Yeah. Right. Even though I did, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
But like, and you know, one of my favorite line, a friend of mine said, I don't like rap music, but I do like G-Love and Special Sauce. That was the whitest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
So here's the deal. I like G-Love and Special Sauce, but I would never call them like rap music.
No.
They rap, but they're not really rap music.
Yeah. So looking back at it, my taste was very white in a certain way, that like the Bismarcky, De La Soul, like, and Beastie Boys, like they all sort of worked together and kind of did stuff together, and they were kind of a similar thing. So in my mind, if I'm being ungenerous to myself, it could have been that Tribe was too black for me when I was a teenager.
I hear you.
And I'm not saying that, like, people always accuse me of white guilt. I'm like, I'm not white guilt. I'm white observing. It's like we all have cultures that influence us in different ways. You just take a step back and look at it. And realistically, that could have been it. But
yeah, because De La was definitely way more playful, and Tribe was kind of like in their bag, like jazzy and like lo-fi type almost. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah. But that said, I mean, I have a lot of white friends who are Tribe fanatics, you know. So I don't think that it's that you know. Oh, who knows what it is? Maybe it was too jazzy. I don't even know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I was super like Queens central. Like anything that came out of Queens was the greatest thing since sliced bread for me. So like I was like, yeah, Tribe, that's our guys. Like, you know, like, that was my perspective all the time. Well, listen, Professor Skye, once again, thank you, number one, for joining today to speak with us, and thank the algorithm. Thank the algorithm, because like,
thank you, Kitty.
How else? Yeah, that asshole of a cat actually worked out tonight. Because like, how else would I connect with you? I think it's pretty amazing and fascinating, and there's so many more conversations I want to have with you about just music and as things evolve. We didn't even get into. I encourage everyone to check out his breakdown of Kendrick and Drake. It is a masterclass of music observation and analysis. So go check that out. Could you just tell them where they could find you?
Yeah, so it's Professor Skye's Record Review on YouTube. I think Professor_Skye on Instagram. My kids are always impressed by how many Instagram followers I have, but I don't know. I really focus a lot more on the YouTube. So yeah, that's where you'd find me. And really, if you type in Professor Skye Kendrick, I'll pop up there, because my top 5 videos are all Kendrick beef videos. Out of the 1,000 videos I've done, the top 5 are all Kendrick Drake videos.
Wop.
That's right.
We got him. Baby Watch. We're on Baby Watch still?
Yep. That'll be in a couple weeks. So it'll be exciting.
Congratulations to you guys.
I'm going to try to do some videos, you know, and record them ahead of time so that I can release them while I'm in the hospital. But the algo kitty does not like that, so we'll see.
Okay. Well, anyway, listen, man. Let the algorithm do what it does. But come back anytime. Can you kick it?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. You know.
Can you kick it with us another time?
Yes, I can. But have you seen? No, but do you know why?
No. What?
Have you seen the Charlie Brown knockoff? Do you have a second so I can go grab it?
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what we're about to see right now. This is interesting. Professor Skye just got up from his desk and he went over somewhere in his office to go grab something to show us. And we will find out what he's showing us in just seconds. I'm intrigued. Okay. So this is holy shit.
I don't know who made it. I don't know who made it. I bought it off of, I don't know, Redbubble or something. I'm sure the artist didn't actually get any money for it. But I have it in a frame because I think, so like I was saying that whole thing about not being a big Tribe fan. Obviously, I love this song. And I just find this to be the funniest image. So yes, I can kick it.
So for those who are just listening, Professor Skye just whipped out a framed photo of Lucy and Linus. Lucy is teeing up the football, and Charlie Brown has a bubble saying, "Can I kick it?" And Lucy saying, "Yes, you can." Professor Skye, you win. You win the cultural artifacts game for the day. That's great. That is a mashup of like 3 big worlds right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it? And I didn't create it. I don't know who created it. I need to figure that out because they should get credit. But yeah, to me that's just perfect, and that actually hangs in my 2-year-old's bedroom because I think the colors are nice and they'll grow up. And
lucky,
like,
that's a lucky child right there. Professor Skye, man, come kick it with us another time, man, and thank you for the time.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, cool.